Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look today at the astrological weather report for the month of July and also the week of June 30th through the 6th. There's not as much going on during the week as there is the month, so it's going to be more about the month. And we can call this retrograde month, July. We've got three more of the outer planets or bodies going retrograde. If you remember, Pluto already is. So Neptune and Saturn traveling together. So, for the last several months at the beginning of Aries are both going to go retrograde within 8 days of each other. And then also at the very end of the month, Chiron is going to go retrograde also. And in the middle of the month, Mercury also goes retrograde for the second time this year in a fire sign again in Leo. And then also a really big shift this month. Uranus is going to go into Gemini. It's going to leave Taurus for the first time in about 7 years. And it'll only be in Gemini for a little while before it retrogrades itself back into Taurus for the rest of the year, but we'll get a little bit of taste of that too. So that's the stuff I'm going to talk about. And then for the weekly, Venus is the big player this week. She's going into Gemini, and that's right after a conjunction with Uranus. And then she's going to hit that Saturn Neptune conjunction. So that's what I'll be talking about. Just a little bit of information first. Just bear with me. The Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog. Been doing for years now on YouTube as a channel also. And so if you like what you see and you have a YouTube account of your own, can you please become a follower? And please don't forget to turn your notifications on also so that you know when the blog is being posted. And what I ask of everybody every week or whenever you listen to the blog is if you can find someone in your contacts list to forward the blog on to pay it forward to me for this service, for this free service. And that's how I get the blog to grow. It's a very organic way, and I like to do it that way. Very authentic way of doing it. And so also remember, the blog was a podcast before it was a YouTube channel. So it's also available, just the audio version, same exact thing that you're watching on YouTube. Nothing changed at all. And that's available out there on podcasts too. So just, go into that podcast app and just type in Astrological Winds channel. You should be able to find it on one of your favorite blogs out there. And then also, Astrological Winds channel has its own Instagram page. So if you have an Instagram account, become a follower there, and it'll show up in your newsreel every week. And then you can always find all the blogs at my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com. There's a blogs tab on top. You hit that, and it'll bring you right to the YouTube. And the cool thing about that too is I get to keep the past blogs there. So the last few months are there. And if you need to go back to the annual one or like the month before for a monthly or the week before for the weekly, you need to check on some stuff. They're all there. They're available still. The website also has all my professional information. I've been doing professional astrology work for over 20 years. After 7 years of training, I'd love to do your chart. Or if you know someone looking for that service, do all kinds of different chart readings. Also do stuff for groups. I have student opportunities too. So check the website out, www.astrologicalwinds.com. Now remember, if you don't know astrology really well, don't get stuck up on the terms. You want to really mainly hear my interpretation of what the energy is so that you're aware of that and you can work with that energy. You can alchemize, that energy, the situations in your life this week, and then maybe it'll go more smoothly, or this month, even. So, like I said, let's do July. I want to do July first. The week's it's a pretty mellow week, but there's, like I said, 4 planets going retrograde in July. Okay, and so what I want to talk about first is Neptune, which is going retrograde this week on July 4th, actually. And then Saturn, which, if you've been listening to the blog or you know astrology at all, This is the big driver of the last few months from the outer planets on what's going on in society, mainly, which, filters down and affects all of our individual lives. And that is Saturn and Uranus are both conjunct in the very beginning of Aries. They both just went into Aries this spring and they've been traveling together, and they're both going to pretty much retrograde within 8 days of each other at the same time. So they're slowing down in the sky. And that's when, the effect of that energy is very powerful. It can be really felt in our lives and seen in the world, especially because Saturn is a social planet and Neptune is a transpersonal planet. So they are working in very big ways. So we can see how they work in the world. And what have I been saying for 3 or 4 months now? If you have been listening to the blog relatively consistently, I've gone over and over, and maybe some of you are even tired of me hearing the message of it is a time that's calling us to put our ideals, our beliefs, our inspirations into action, into the real world. It's a challenge to do that at this time, right? And the real world is really going to test that stuff. Saturn is really going to make you prove, or anybody prove, including leaders of worlds, including countries, right? In this world, prove that their ideals are worthy and will fit into reality right now. So this is a time where you're going to get tested from every conceivable angle to see how committed we are to our ideals. And so this retrograde time is really going to be a time where it's our first reflection back at what's gone on over the last few months in your life and in society. And now we've got a little bit of a taste about how Saturn and Neptune are working together in Aries. And, a lot of you guys, I know I've warned people, this is a very dangerous period for society because Aries is very impulsive and really feels it's right and doesn't really take into effect how its actions are affecting those around it. So we have a lot of leaders that are in this world really doing that. And so this is our first chance to really reflect back on what that energy feels like. Like, what did Saturn and Neptune in your life do that's reflective of that, of your ideals trying to get into reality and the tests that are coming up? Like, this gives us, like, during this retrograde period, it will give us a chance to really look into that on a deep level and just say to ourselves, okay, you know what? I need to maybe take a look at this again and the way I'm doing things. And maybe I need to make some adjustments because it does keep running into like reality and it's not working as well as I thought. So, what can I do? It's a time where we can reflect on that. Like, what can I do to become more effective? What can I do to make it a smoother process? Now, going back to society and the world, I think it's going to be a very difficult summer. I really do. I think a lot of the decisions that were made in society by leaders over the last few months, not only in the United States, but all around the world, are really going to come back and bite them during this retrograde period. Like, and when you add in the fact that Mercury is going to go retrograde in Leo, the sign of leadership and leaders, right in the middle of all this summer too, and stay in Leo the whole time, it's going to show, yeah, like a lot of these decisions that were made during this time came from arrogant positions, came from prideful positions and by our leaders. And now the influence of that is coming back not only to bite them, but to bite their followers, which is their whole countries, really. You know, in certain cultures, right, the greatest weakness of even the gods is pride. Pride can be the downfall of even the gods. So when you think about the Leo archetype of the king, the god, Sol, the sun, right? Ra, Apollo. Pride is an issue over and over and over again, right? And for leaders who are living that Leo archetype, that is very easy to step into that puddle of pride and get sucked into it, right? And not be able to get yourself out of it. Okay. There's going to be a lot to learn during that period, during this summer, about issues that have to do with our own impulsive actions based on pride, based on self righteousness, based on a very subjective position, and then being stubborn about it. That could really come back and bite us. Now, let me just give you some of the numbers here, guys. Saturn goes retrograde at 2 degrees on the 12th, at 2 degrees of Aries, and will go back into Pisces by September 2nd, and then turn direct on November 27th at 25 degrees Pisces, and then will not return to Aries until early next year, in the winter of next year, or the summer down south. Once again, this shows with Saturn going back into Pisces, right? What is that showing? I talked about that for 2 years while Saturn was in Pisces. Dualistic sign, belief systems, two opposing belief systems, right? Creating a lot of conflict and struggle in reality. Saturn, the world as it is right now. So that's once again showing us, where did all this war and tension and all this aggression get rooted in? Saturn going back into Pisces, later Neptune going back into Pisces, is rooted into still creating division around belief systems. Okay. And remember, this is also an internal process where we have to ask ourselves, while Saturn goes retrograde through Pisces, do we have conflicting belief systems within ourselves that are blocking us from getting our ideals into reality? Because if we do, then we don't have that 100% commitment yet. We don't have that never falter attitude that Saturn wants to see you have before it's going to work for you. So that's really important. Then Neptune goes retrogrades on the 4th, like I said, this week actually, goes back into Pisces on August 23rd. It will turn direct on December 10th and does not go back into Aries until early next year. I think it's around the end of January. So, once again, on a personal level, this is where we get to really reflect on whether we're being even realistic enough with our ideals in the first place. Like, are they just too far out and imaginative and right brain that they'll never actually work within the structure of Saturn in the real world? Like, are they just too much out there? So this is a chance where we'll really get to contemplate that on a level. But what I really think, you guys, what the biggest lesson in this um, is that we're literally at a height right now of the blindness that's created by division. And the world is showing us what the results of that can be. Really, that's really what the lesson of this is. This Saturn, Neptune, Pisces, Aries, Mercury retro, going to jump right on top of it. I really, really think that's what it's showing us. This is like, as long as we continue to divide, how bad can it be? How bad can we make it? So this is a great time, these next few months, where we can reflect on that lens of and really see how bad it can be. And do we want to change that? Because if we do, we have to confront ourselves first. And if we have any conflicting ideals or beliefs that are just too far out that aren't going to work and are creating division, then we're going to probably get sucked into a lot of war and things like that. So we have a lot of, Saturn and Neptune are going to be together for the next couple of years still. So we have a lot of time to really work on this. But during the retrograde parts, we're going to really want to, take it in and look at the results so far. Do we have to make adjustments? Do we have to drop certain things? What do we have to do to make it work better? All right, on July 7th, Uranus goes into Gemini. So Uranus will be leaving Taurus for the first time in almost 7 years. And what has Uranus and Taurus been shaking up? The whole world's resources, right? Talks about that, probably when this blog went over to YouTube and on the podcast 7 years ago, when Uranus went into Taurus, to be prepared for a very unstable world of resources. And is that what we've gotten? That's exactly what we've gotten, right? So Uranus goes into Gemini, but it will go retrograde on September 5th, like the rest of the outer planets, and then we'll go back into Taurus again on November 9th. So it's only going to be in Gemini for a few months here, but it will give us a little bit of a taste of what it's like. And I did talk extensively about Uranus going into Gemini on the annual blog, which is still available on the website. So on the blogs tab. So, I would say go back to that if you haven't listened to it. But remember, one of the biggest dangers to me about Uranus with Gemini is we're going to see explosive advances, amazing advances in technology and in science. And I think it's both these signs are, both the planet and the sign are very intellectually driven, right? So the ingenuity on the intellectual level is going to be incredible. But both signs have a very insensitive way of dealing with the emotional residue or debris of what they do in Gemini. So like so or what Uranus will do in Gemini. I'm sorry. So we have to be very aware of that a lot of these incredible advances could actually have a lot of effects on people that are hurting them actually, and being insensitive to that is really probably the biggest issue. We're going to really have to check in with our own consciousness, our own intuition, to know whether we're on the right path during the Uranus and Gemini period. But it will really speed up the age of discovery, especially in technology. I would expect we're going to come up with new, faster ways to travel, new, faster ways to communicate, new, faster ways to share information, and anything that's a machine. Anything that's a machine, not just computers, like anything, is probably going to be improved. There's going to be major advances, and that includes weaponry too, which can be a dangerous thing when Neptune and Aries and Saturn and Aries are, they can sextile the Uranus, make us better weapons, make us more efficient weapons. That's a good way to not want to use it. But it's really, we're going to probably, in the human mind, access new parts of our brain that we've never been able to access before during the Uranus and Gemini. I think if there's going to be a singularity between man and machine, it will likely occur during Uranus and Gemini. Um, it's a very ingenious, innovative ability in our mind, and it's great at design too, like design from an abstract level and bringing it in to technology and science. So, like coding, things like that. Once again, anything having to do with technology, electronics, and then, in society too, it will be a time of very revolutionary ideas, like how to actually live. Like there may be new ways that societies come up with living. So there's a lot of excitement, in this, but we literally have to be aware of that disconnect that Gemini and Uranus both share to the residue of their decision making in emotionally on others, and their environment, and how, like, can overlook a lot of the details, like, okay, if we need all these rare minerals, are we destroying, like, huge parts of our environment to do them? That's kind of a good example of the kind of things we're going to have to be very aware and conscious of, and allow and try to find the right decision through our intuition. I'll say then on July 18th is when Mercury goes retrograde. That will be at 16 degrees of Leo. It will turn direct on August 11th at 4 degrees of Leo. So it will, and then it will stay in Leo until September 3rd. So we've got pretty much the whole summer in the northern hemisphere, winter in the southern hemisphere, of course, with Mercury in Leo. And I really think Mercury retrograde in Leo, like, how retrograde Mercury is, if you're familiar with astrology at all, where we really see the mistakes. And then, so it's going to show us a lot of the mistakes that we make are from our own arrogance, from our own pride, from our own self righteousness. And that's what's going to be messing up our plans. That's also what's going to cause communication breakdowns, because we're going to still be stubborn about it. We're going to probably still be prideful about it. Everybody's going to be in this subjective framework of so attached to my belief system that you're either with me or against me, and I'm just going to shut down communications if you're with me. And I'll tell you, even when you're with people right now, that people are so like worked up that you can see even the people who are on the same team aren't listening to each other very well. And so this will really, rack that energy up, so to speak. I mean, because we're really bought into our own opinions and beliefs, and we're sure we're right, and it's just gonna, just create a lot of issues that where we're stuck and not able to get through, not able to take in the new data, blow things out of proportion too. Like Mercury and Leo can blow things out of proportion as it is. With this retrograde, you might not be, people may get more bombastic. Our leaders may become more bombastic and just keep making it worse and worse for themselves. So, just expect all those normal Mercury retrograde issues: communication, travel, wrong information, plans not working out, not a good thing to start. They're going to all go off track. And a lot of it's just going to have to do with being stuck in our own thing. And then right at the end of the month, Chiron goes retrograde, also in Aries, but Chiron is really close to the end of Aries at this point. It will go retrograde at 27 degrees Aries and remains retrograde the rest of the year. So we still have another year or so of Chiron in Aries. And once again, if you've been listening to blog for years now, because Chiron has been in Aries for years now, I've talked about this as a time period where we all have to take self-responsibility for our own healing and learning. So when it goes retrograde, it's a time where we can, look back at the actions of the last 7 or 8 months and that we've taken, and the ones that have hurt us, and look at those and learn how we hurt ourselves with the decisions that we made, how we were not most likely well thought out enough or disciplined with the energy in Aries, and how we were the authors of our own demise. And actually a lot of it having to do with not being usually sensitive enough to how our actions are affecting others around us. So this will give us a chance to reflect back, take a look at that, maybe make some self correction and attitude and the patterns that we have inside us and the way we react to things when we're feeling hurt or challenged, and get some inner learning out of this and get some inner healing done. Okay, now let's go to the week. Now, the week is actually pretty mellow. Like I said, um, July 4th, I'm going to jump all the way to Friday. July 4th, Neptune, that's the day Neptune goes retrograde. It's also the day that the actor of the week this week is Venus. Hey, out on stage, Venus this week. We had Mars last week and Venus or the week before. And then so Venus is our main actor of this week's play. And she on Friday is going conjunct Uranus at the very late degrees of Taurus. Um, so this can really shake up relationships. Venus conjunct Uranus is a relationship shaker, and new connections that you make can be uber exciting. You can have all kinds of new experiences with people that are new people in your life and have like really unexpected results. Like that can be really, if you're into change, if you're into change that's brought by new things, it can be really exciting. It really has a lot to do with your attitude. But if you're stuck on wanting things to be a certain way, then these new people and unexpected results they bring in can be very disturbing to you. It really has a lot to do with what your attitude is. But this can also bring a lot of creativity in, a lot of new creativity into our energy field, like where we have different ways, find new ways of expressing our creativity, our uniqueness. Um, it is an indicator sometimes of new love relationships for sure. Many times those love relationships are short term. They're like ships in the night passing, and they, make a trade. They have some valuable cargo for one another, and then they move on, or they can be relationships with people who are very different from you in some way, like background, economics, culture, just the way your philosophies. But that Uranus and the uniqueness and the differences is what's really attractive right now. So it can actually be a long-term relationship with someone who's very different than you that can be started under this. But it brings trouble to older relationships, really. Like we can really be like worked up to a point of being very irritated about certain things in older relationships, and we may explode in anger at this, really go off on each other. So that's something to be aware of, that if you're feeling that kind of irritation, you got to be really aware that you could blow up on one of your loved ones. So it's good to try to get the energy out there openly and honestly without getting too charged up about it. Also, with money, Venus Uranus can indicate a quick financial gain, like a one-time gain, or if we're not being disciplined with our money, it can, and we get a little too risky, it can indicate a quick financial loss. So you got to be a little bit careful. But remember, like I said, also tapping into new places of creativity for yourself, or seeking out new forms of creativity, art, entertainment, all things like that. So really, really interesting energy there. And then right after that, on Friday, Venus changes signs and goes into Gemini. So when Venus is in Gemini, she is very vivacious. She is very extroverted. She is very social. She wants to meet everybody in the room. Everybody. So, so this is like a time where we really like to get ourselves out there and meet as many possible different people as we can, have all kinds of different experiences with people. So therefore, people in general, Venus in Gemini, and it will be in Gemini until August 1st, so it's almost a full month. Um, very open to one another. They're very accepting of each other's differences. They're very lively. They're very sharp, witty, fun, humorous to hang out with. You can amuse one another is a good way to say it. It's also, once again, Venus creativity with words. So, if you're a writer, if you're a poet, if you're a rapper, if you're a speaker, a storyteller, this is when you can find yourself being extremely eloquent and productive, tapping into lots of new ideas. It's fun too because like Gemini keeps usually the ideas fun and entertaining, light and superficial, not too heavy. And that's how we are with our relationships in Gemini, too. In fact, Venus and Gemini, if people start to bring in the dark, heavy, deeper stuff, that's it. She's going to run away on you. She's going to fly out the door. In other words, the heavy emotional situations is not something we really want to deal with when Venus is in Gemini. In fact, it's not a time where we really even want to make deep commitments, or attachments to other people. It's really a time where we want our freedom and having the ability to be open to any kind of possibility that comes through. But really, a lot of it is centered around exchanging ideas on the intellectual level. Really, that's what really drives that Venus in Gemini. And then right after that, on Sunday, the 6th, Venus, right in Gemini, will sextile the Saturn Neptune conjunction, which is stationary at that point and very, very poignant. When planets are right at their turning points, that's when that energy can be so focused. So then we get one of the inner planets coming along and triggering it even more, and in this case in a sextile, which is a beneficial or positive aspect, and will give us the opportunity to get our beliefs out about like our different ideas about art and spirituality and relationships and life in general, and get them into some structure. It will give us opportunities to get real with others in relationships that we sense that we have, a soul connection with, like on an idealistic plane, and that, there's this very great understanding and empathy with one another's, and a sensitivity where we can get really real with it and really structure with it and like get committed, have a right attitude about it. It's also a really good time for taking creativity and putting it into our work and our work relationships too. They can get very detailed, very intricate and eloquent with our use of creativity through work. So I really think that's a great time too for like businesses. And then also this is a great time, with these two going on, to get advice from someone that you have respect for their, that they have maybe a more enlightened way of looking at things, or they just have more wisdom than you in something that, you're very curious on right now, and they can help you advance. So, but this is a time where we can recognize the people who we have a deeper soul, idealistic connection with, right? And then we can realize that connection on the plane of reality. So really great energy to work with Venus this week. So that's what I got for this week and this month, you guys. Next week we will have, I think we'll have our full moon, won't we? Yeah, we will. On Thursday next week, we have a full moon at 19 degrees of Capricorn. So those cardinal signs are going to be affected by that full moon again. And then next week is also the week that Saturn joins the retrograde parade, which I just talked about in depth. So I won't be talking about that. We'll get really into that full moon next week. Okay, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I need you right now to pass this link on for what I just did for you. And if you'd like to actually make a currency donation, no amount is too small. Seriously, Cash App is $Matthew, 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten. Venmo at Matthew, 2 T's, hyphen in the middle, Lawton, Lauten. Seriously, guys, no amount is too small. I really appreciate that. The best way to support me is when you're ready for a natal reading, or your predictive reading for the year, or relationship chart, or horary, or election question. check out my website. I've been doing readings for over 20 years. I've been a professional astrologer for over 20 years. I did 7 years of schooling and testing to learn to get to that point. And I've had amazing, amazing experiences with so many clients. I'd like that to be you too. Your chart never leaves you. You get new cars, new homes, new clothes, everything in your life. Invest a little in yourself. If it's your birthday month, you can get 10% off either your birth chart reading or your predictive or the combination of the two. So check my website out. It has all the prices. If you need to do installments, we can do work on that. Also, if you're interested in being a student, I do have podcast beginner class available right away. I'm trying to get a beginner's class going. I've got even tutoring if people are wanting to take it to that level of one-on-one. If you're a professional and you need monthly or weekly or daily readings, I do that for people too. Or if you're going through a really hard time in your life or a challenging time where you need extra readings, I do those readings too. So check in with me. And if you have a group that's looking for a workshop, a class, a lecture, mini readings for some kind of events that can even be done online, just check out the website www.astrologicalwinds.com. There's my direct email too, matthure823@gmail.com. Open up a conversation there. It never hurts to open up a conversation. I definitely don't bite. Okay, you guys, let's go through. I mean, this is going to be a challenging summer. There's going to be a lot of social unrest. There's going to be a lot of unrest in the world. There's a lot of fire behind what's going on right now. And remember, fire is purification, but it also has to take things and burn them down into ashes so something new can rise out of those ashes. The phoenix can rise, So we're looking at a pretty intense summer, but we can all be responsible for our own self and our own world and trying to get our own ideals in and refining them and working on them and staying disciplined. All right, I will see you all next week and we'll talk about that full moon and Cap.